Hi and welcome back to a new video. Computex 2023, that was 1.5 years ago. We were visiting the booth of Seasonic. There we spotted eBlaztr, and that is an ultra portable gaming case. 1.5 years later, I want to see what happened and how good it is in terms of building a PC inside. With a passion for IT and technical expertise, Hetzner offers innovative solutions for complex requirements worldwide. Through its own state-of-the-art data centers in Falkenstein, Nuremberg and Helsinki, as well as cloud locations in the US and Singapore, Hetzner prioritizes efficiency above all. The server auction offers both standardized systems and previously customized setups, all with no minimum contract term and no setup fee. Thanks to the server auction, hardware is reused sustainably, providing highly affordable systems while benefiting the environment. Find out all details about the server auction in the link below. That's basically it, pretty simple. You have the handles, buttons next to it. If you press them, then the feet drop out. And I will show you that once it's assembled, and then we can also move around, check the mechanism and everything. But the cool thing about this is that one of you can win this system once we have built it. You can just simply check out the link in the description below. Just as usual, Google Forms, leave your name and email address, and then, yeah, good luck in participating. In general, this is like a better notebook replacement, much more portable, much more powerful. You can hook up a monitor to the front side up to 25 inches, which will be bigger than any monitor. And obviously, if we turn it around, then there is space for normal PC hardware. We can have a ITX motherboard, SFX PSU, and pretty much a normal sized GPU, like triple slot, and I think up to 31 centimeters. So a lot of graphics cards should fit inside, and I can see a use case for especially industrial use. Here at Grizzly in the daily business, we often have other companies visiting us if they want to demo some machines. We often had cases where companies, they came here, they had to set up PCs for the demos because laptops were not strong enough. And I think for that kind of application, this could be extremely useful because it's very easy to set up and it will definitely have more power than any notebook. And as I told you before, with those two buttons on the side, you can control the feet and you can also adjust the angle if you want to. I'm still not 100% familiar with how it works, but you press it, you can adjust it, you leave it, and then kind of like this. I was just a bit confused how to open this thing. I couldn't spot any screws, and it only said in the manual to take off the top and bottom lid, which was not that easy, but it's a quite simple and clever mechanism. We have to push these things in, and then we can open it. And with that, we can take off the back cover, which is heavily perforated, so it should be very good for any kind of cooling or airflow. And then we have space for the components. I just noticed that all these parts are extremely lightweight. Then I did a tiny scratch test, and that's aluminium. And that also explains probably part of the price, because this thing costs 450 euros. All the components I selected and purchased myself to make sure that we have something that goes together well, especially with mini ITX builds. It's often not that easy. We have a 4070 Super Pro Art, and I'm thinking if art in the name stands for the art of wrapping this in plastic. But then we also have a 7800X 3D. I was thinking to go for the 9800X 3D, but as you know, it's just not possible to get one at a normal price. One thing I have to criticize a little bit is the manual and some details in it. For example, I'm struggling to remove this cable hiding plate that probably also allows for 2.5-inch SSD mountings, but it says that I should just remove it by pressing on the buttons where it's attached. And I guess they mean these two parts. I already lifted this up and tried to move this to the side, but I still can't pull it out. It seems to be really difficult to do for whatever reason. Then I thought, okay, there's a QR code in the front of the manual, and I just scan this QR code and check the video. And in the video, this is not even in there. So they start by just putting the graphics card inside, and the cable hiding plate, it just isn't there. So yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not sure if I would call this simple, but indeed you have to push this up, push it to the side and then take it out. So it's not as simple as stated in the manual. Yeah, not a big fan of this mechanism, but what I think what they did quite nicely is the integration of cables and connections, because you want to treat this somehow like a notebook, and for that you have just this single connection terminal, so one power cord, then Ethernet connection, audio jacks, USB 2.0 and 3.0. I wish they also included USB Type-C. I think nowadays would be good to have USB Type-C. And then internally you have two sets of power cords. The one with 90 degrees goes into the PSU and the other one we will have to put in the monitor. The GPU installation is also not as easy as I initially expected. Yes, the card will go in that orientation. There's a special riser cable included. Here we have the screws similar to what you have in your normal case. So there they should kind of attach. And if we turn it around, there you can see this extra piece of plastic. I already loosened this from the other side. And here we are supposed to clip the card in, like in between. Probably have to loosen it a bit more and then tighten it from the front. It seems like I can't use the bottom orientation because that part of the I/O shield seems to collide with this part of the case, with this metal bar. You can see in here. Can't push it in here. This way you can maybe see it a bit better. So once it is in the right position for the screws here, then I can't lift it up in the back orientation, like it is tilted because it collides on here. But no problem. A little spoiler for in between, because everything you're seeing right here with dremeling the GPU turned out to be not necessary because I was just too stupid to mount the GPU the right way. But I want to leave this in here anyway, so you could see the process of what I went through, and then we will get back to this later. Second try. Fits without any issue. Now it's getting more confusing. I'm supposed to use this HDMI cable, wrap it around the card basically in front underneath the riser cable. It's also stated in here. But there's no space. So I can't do that. I have to mount the card in the top position, which is not possible on this model. I tell you, the Dremel is the thing, because I'm convinced that if I increase the spacing in between here by maybe like a millimeter, then I can mount it just a little bit lower. That might fix it. This is kind of a special riser cable because it has 180 degrees on that side where we have to insert the GPU like that. And then here we would have the ITX motherboard like that. I'm not sure why this is also 180 degrees here. Like 90 would have been better, but yeah. Let's hope now with the HDMI cable it will work. My mistake, it's a DisplayPort cable, not HDMI. I just noticed, looks a bit odd. But it doesn't fix the problem. Like, it doesn't fix that we have no space underneath the card once we have it in the most bottom orientation. According to the manual, the next step will be to mount the PSU. Just in terms of the order, how you build in this case, everything is a bit different from how I usually build in a normal case. Also different is the PSU size. It's SFX, obviously maximum supported, and I picked the SPX 650 from Seasonic, fully modular, high efficiency. Also, this allows, because it's fully modular, that we can directly hook up this 12-volt high power cable to the 4070 Super. And because 4070 Super and 7800X 3D are both fairly efficient parts, I think typical gaming scenario, we should maybe be around 300 watts under load. And I think that should be like the sweet spot. Running a 650 watt PSU, like half of it should be pretty nice. PSU was no problem. Also, this is pretty nice. We only have 3 cables. We have the 24-pin ATX, EPS, and then the 12-volt high power towards the GPU. Now the next step is mounting the monitor, because on these holes right here, we will attach it from the front. And once you have the motherboard in there, you won't be able to reach that. Monitor is from AOC Gaming. It's a 25-inch. That should be the maximum that fits on here. And it's 240 Hz. So I think with the GPU and CPU, that should be a perfect gaming combination. 25-inch monitor is definitely cute these days for what we usually use. Now on these mounting holes, we should be able to attach the monitor to the case, but we will have to mount it with the monitor facing downwards to the table. So we have to be careful not to scratch it. I would just put this underneath, be extra careful, and then it should be okay. There are 3 different lengths of screws included in the case. We have short ones, middle, and then also pretty long ones, and it will depend on the monitor and how far it's recessed, or if there's anything in a way that could collide with the case, and then you would just have to pick the right screw length to be able to reach the monitor from through the case. There are a lot of holes in here, and it just determines the middle position of the monitor, but the C height, we just have to figure out, probably just put it on top and figure out which hole orientation will be the best. The monitor is mounted, but I'm not sure if I like the way how this is executed. I think the much better way would be to use standoffs and screw these into the monitor first and then mount the standoffs to the case. Because that would just mean that you have the standoffs that are connected with the monitor mount in the back and then to the case. But right now, what we're doing is we're squeezing the back side of the monitor case to the case plate here. That is, I'm not sure if this is an issue, but yeah, it just doesn't feel 100% correct to me. The base, as you know, is the Asus Strix board with the 7800X 3D on it, and there I add a dual channel kit from Corsair 6000 C30 with 64GB capacity and also a Lexar NM790 with 2TB capacity. The question for me was now which cooler to choose. Obviously we want to take the biggest cooler possible to dissipate as much heat as possible, but I couldn't find a compatibility list online on the eBlaztr product page. I also highlighted this to them. Also GPU-wise, there is not really any supported list online. So we will start with the ID Cooling CPU cooler that is 55mm in height. Then we have a Thermalright one with 53 and worst case Alpenföhn with 47. That one should fit for sure. At least the ID Cooling IS55 Black fits on the motherboard. It slightly collides on the right, just the mounting mechanism. And there's, I think, 0.5 mm space between the memory and the cooler. But I mean, space is space. I can see if I look in between that there's some thermal paste being squeezed out between the cold plate and the CPU, so that should be fine. Might be difficult to see, but those rubber pads of the fans, I think they're like 1 or 2 mm higher than this edge. Yeah, that might be tight. So time to check if this fits. Yeah, it's bending a little bit. The trade-off would be to go back to the 53mm height cooler, which is a little bit smaller, but it also means that we would neglect cooling performance, and I think I'd rather have this bend a little bit, and I won't see it anyway, but have better cooling. I didn't fix the motherboard yet. I will first insert or try to insert the riser cable and then fix it later. I'm almost done with the cable management. I'm pretty happy with the result. This is also better than I expected. There's plenty of room here. First I thought it's kind of a waste of space, but now that I'm building in it, I appreciate having so much space for the cable management. That is nice. Only, I mean, this is positive and negative. There are those metal bars here that have holes for zip ties. That is nice. But then again, you can see Jensen will get a heart attack when he sees the 12-volt high power bent this way, but there's no other way to do it. Generally though, quite nice. I just wish they made the power button cable also black. It's kind of ruining the design, but apart from that, yeah, not bad. I want to cover this with this cable hiding plate. That plate and me, we will not become friends. This is, I don't know. Done with the assembly, finally. And oh yeah, this is a bit more heavy now. Seems to be working. Okay, I will install Windows quickly. Honestly, the first startup on an AMD system, you never know if it's just broken or if boot takes forever. Right now, yeah, I tried it multiple times, reboot. So far, no display signal. As usual, there's a huge amount of potential problems or what could cause this. We will just start with the obvious stuff. I already plugged the DisplayPort cable into a different connector on the card, which didn't fix it, but I didn't really like how much you had to bend the DisplayPort cable. That easily can damage things. So I will now try the external monitor. Let's check if we can get a signal there. Didn't work, but one more try with the small external HDMI monitor, because there's always this DisplayPort bug that I'm still not sure about why this always happens. HDMI no signal. Great. With no display signal, but getting the keyboard detected, like we can see that it basically posts and we get a USB signal. I think it shouldn't be motherboard, CPU, memory, like all of this should work. And I mean, we didn't really, do sketchy stuff with the GPU. So it shouldn't be the GPU, hopefully. But I'm not so sure about the riser cable, to be honest. I had to really stretch it out and bend it heavily to plug it in. It didn't feel good. And there is always a risk to damage the riser cable. I just took the card out, but with the same riser cable, I reseated everything. There could always be a contact issue. So that would be the first thing to test before jumping to a conclusion that the riser cable is broken. Because the riser cable is not fixed anywhere. So it just gets stuck onto the GPU slot. Yeah. So we get display signal. Riser cable is not broken, that is great. It's just that it just didn't have good connection. I think the reason is that the riser cable is just not mounted anywhere in the case. It's just plugged to the card, but if I press a little bit here, it just comes loose. And that is definitely a risk, especially if you consider that this might be something that you transport around. And if there's any vibration, I could see the riser card maybe come loose again. I would definitely describe myself as a patient person, but I'm about to lose it. And I put everything back together, it doesn't work again. I can't get neither DisplayPort signal nor HDMI on the external monitor. It just doesn't work. Then I wasn't sure if it's maybe the 12-volt high power cable. That's also something that we had, I don't know, over a year ago, where there was a cable that didn't make perfect connection, and if we just moved it a little bit, then yeah, it didn't have good contact. But I tried that, I tried everything. One day later, and in between, I was in contact with eBlaztr because I wanted to make sure that I didn't make a mistake here. And it turned out that I was the mistake here, and I fucked up badly, to be fully honest. And I'm not sure how I assumed that the holes that I already increased in size were the right mounting holes for GPU. I mean, for how long have I been building PCs, making reviews, and I couldn't find the right mounting holes on the GPU. Yeah, there is another hole here, and that would be the correct one. Now with using the different mounting hole, the card should sit slightly higher, and that should then allow that we can also put the cable underneath. Now the card is back in the case, and it seems to be sitting correctly. Cable is underneath. And there you can see where I failed, where I had the screws in the other locations, where I also messed up the card a little bit, and where the screw is now in the correct location. I just hope that the riser cable doesn't come loose. It's not fixed anywhere. So there's still potential that it can come loose, but it's maybe better now. Second try, let's hope it works. I'm just running 3D Mark times by Extreme. A score of about 9,000 points in times by Extreme, that should be correct. The GPU was hitting 67 degrees Celsius on the core and hotspot 80 degrees Celsius. That is okay for a 4070 Super, especially in 3D Mark, which is a much higher load than most of the games. CPU a little bit less load, except for the CPU test. That is also quite hefty for the CPU, but max 78 degrees Celsius on the CPU. So for the 7800X 3D, that is also a really good result. And that's the design from the back with the running system. And I wasn't sure if it might introduce extra noise with the plate sitting directly on the CPU fan, but it's fine. You can't really hear anything. This is idle. CPU fan is spinning a little bit. GPU fans are not spinning at all. And even under load in 3D Mark, it was quiet because the ventilation is really, really good. So in the end, it turned out nice with a few, problems from my side. In the standard or maximum feed operation mode, the screen is tilted slightly towards me, which would be my personal preference. But again, you can change this if you want to. If you press the buttons and then you would have to check if it's straight, but it looks good. And then you can tilt it backwards a little bit if that's necessary. And then I was not sure if it might change the center of gravity and let it fall over easily, but that's not the case. You can see even if I lift it up a little bit, it comes back to the front. So that's fine. It wouldn't just fall over. There's just this thing that it feels a little bit wobbly, as you can see. But I think you should not be afraid of the feet breaking, because there was also a video of how they tested the feet and they seem to be really strong. Like even if I do this, they don't just break. It's just that they're maybe a little bit free to move, which is probably caused by how they designed the mechanism, with that you press down, that they just fall down by themselves. And that's only working if there's plenty of space for the mechanism, like not too tight tolerances, so it doesn't stick. So yeah, having this maybe a bit tighter would probably not make the mechanism possible. So I think there's just some trade-off, but I think it's fine. Even if you just move your mouse, it doesn't move too much. So I think that's absolutely okay. The eBlaztr is a very interesting design, but I think it's too specific for the broad audience using this at home. But I can definitely see that this could be very interesting for any industrial application or companies traveling a lot with PCs for any kind of exhibitions, for example. I think this could be extremely useful, because there is not only the eBlaztr itself, but also the case that I showed you earlier in the video, and that is also, has a lot of foam inside for perfect protection of the system. It's a very thick shell, so you can take it on the plane and it wouldn't be damaged, which I think can be very useful for companies traveling, for example, to exhibitions, doing demos, or as I said earlier, companies that travel to other companies. But I don't really see the normal user using this at home. For that, it's probably too specific, has too many limitations, for example, when it comes to the screen, and obviously also the price of 450 euro, which just wouldn't be too much for the normal user, I think. But still, at least in this very specific configuration with the 1080p 240 Hz monitor, 4070 Super, 7800X 3D, I think the winner will have fun with this. I mean, this is definitely, it has potential for gaming for sure, because for 1080p and high refresh rates, that should definitely be interesting. So make sure you participate in the giveaway. Now, second part of the conclusion, which is much more about me and how I'm shooting videos, how I'm approaching things, because I'm not happy how things turned out. I should have approached this a little bit different. For you, it probably didn't make a big difference, but behind the scenes, well, yesterday I shot the video, and during the process of shooting the video, I was like Jonan said, I was on autopilot, doing the things and being pretty sure, I would say at least 90%, that I wasn't doing the mistake. I was sure that it was product related, which it wasn't. It was, there wasn't really a manual I could follow, which was definitely part of it, but still it was my mistake not taking the right screw hole. Like such a simple thing, right? Which could potentially cause a lot of trouble, a lot of problems, because you have to think about, if I would publish a video, and there was a video already, there was a draft with a different conclusion. The conclusion was that I couldn't finish the system, that I had a hard time fitting the graphics card and I couldn't build it. It wouldn't work. And keeping in mind that this is a small company, they have been around for a couple of years now, but it's still a small company. And a video like this could potentially cause a lot of harm to them, a lot of damage, maybe even irreversible. Like if it's taking too much damage, they might go out of business. So there's a lot of responsibility that I, for example, have as a YouTuber, that any YouTuber has. and I definitely have to reflect on how I'm doing my videos, also timing-wise, because right now for my time schedule, I'm working for Grizzly from Monday to Friday, most of the time 12 hours a day, so I don't have time shooting videos in between usually. Then I'm shooting a video on Saturday, which I'm uploading on Sunday, which just doesn't allow a lot of time to make mistakes. So if you're making a mistake like this, or at the time not knowing that it's a mistake, I should just reach out to the company, give them time to respond. Well, I reached out to the company, but I didn't really give them a lot of time, right? Because I was sure that I was doing it correctly, and I was asking to be sure. I had the gut feeling that there might be something that I fucked up, and I wanted to double check that it wasn't me doing the mistake. And I just didn't give them enough time. It wasn't really fair from my side. I just want to make that clear. I already apologized to Jonan for how things were handled. I'm not happy about myself, how things were done. And this video is kind of a lesson to me to do things a little bit different for the future. It wouldn't really make a difference for you, but I think I have to give more time in advance, allow more time to double check mistakes so they're not happening. I just wanted to make clear that you guys are aware of this, that there's a high responsibility and there's always the risk that something goes wrong and that we do mistakes. Also, the reviewers do mistakes. That just happens, but I have to make sure that I'm handling this correctly and just make sure that, yeah, bad videos or wrong videos would not be published or at least corrected. I think the way it was done in this video, but maybe a bit better than in this video with just a better time schedule. I hope you understand what I was trying to say, and I hope that somebody of you will have fun with this. So make sure you're participating in the giveaway. You will find the link in the description down below. All right, thanks for tuning in. See you next time. Bye-bye.